Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome back to the last home stretch of breakout sessions. Funny, James and I joked last week, having the words regulated industries in the title, we thought it would probably dissuade a lot of people from coming, but it's a bit thinner on the ground, but we're still here. So over the next 30 minutes or so, James and I are going to discuss the paradoxical topic of balancing innovation with compliance, but with a specific lens on lessons that we can learn from regulated industries. So over the past couple of weeks in preparation for today, we've had a discussion around some best case use cases that James can share, with some of those that I've gleaned from working with some of you in the last 5 years or so at Helium. Although I don't know if you're here, there was a couple of cheeky ones that said I've been working with you for 21 years, so thanks for that. But the good news is, over those 21 years, I've had the pleasure of working with customers in regulated and non-regulated industries across the whole of Europe and Middle East and Africa. And on reflection, whilst I think the role of a digital marketeer is broadly the same, regardless of what camp you might be in, the one standout difference, in my opinion, was the amount of time that I spent, or actually more likely you spent as digital marketeers, with apparently those highly paid legal representatives in your organisations. So maybe if I just illustrate that with an example, around 7 to 8 years ago, I worked with a UK travel operator, stroke aggregator. So this was just before GDPR regulations became enforced in the UK. And they had this quite grand plan of a campaign where they wanted to deliver a consistent, personalised omni-channel experience. And in that plan, they were going to combine their CRM data, so their first-party data, with some third-party data, such as household size, household income, travel preferences, etc. And the scope of the campaign was to have very highly targeted dynamic content-driven display advertising off-site, coming back to some customized landing pages. And at the end of that session, ping an email to the existing or the known customers to reflect where they were in their customer journey. So a use case that we're probably all very typical of today in terms of the beginning and the end points. But whilst that campaign probably took 7 to 8 weeks from design to activation, which in itself is pretty quick, I'd say the amount of time that I spent, or more likely the digital marketeers spent with their legal team in that case, was probably less than half a day. And that was with first and third party data. Now, if I compare that and contrast that to today, where I've been working with some financial services and healthcare customers, I'll keep it anonymous because you might be in the room. I'd say the scope of their campaign is to have personalised landing pages to optimise conversions and sign-ups to the next stage, etc. But the amount of time they've already spent with their legal teams discussing sensitivity of the data sourced, is it encrypted, will it be hashed, where's the data going to be stored, and so on, is probably 1 to 2 weeks already. So there's a lot of contrast between non-regulated and regulated industries. But as we all know, the tentacles of regulation and legislation are spreading, and they're deepening down into how we use customer data today. So that whilst non-regulated industries might have had an easier ride than regulated industries, the same level of inspection is coming to everybody. So the idea of today is that James and I are going to discuss how Legal & General have used their first-party data to deliver compliant, efficient, customised experiences. And for all of you to be able to walk away today, regardless of industry, with some best practices and some tips on how you might be able to use that sort of data in your own world. So without any further ado, but perhaps 30 seconds intro from James. They've been on stage all day today, Legal & General, but I don't think he's had an opportunity to introduce himself. So if you could just introduce your role and roughly what you do at Legal & General.
I've just noticed, by the way, we both look younger and definitely happier on those photos, so we might need to refresh
It's
them.
a picture 10 years old.
But yeah, I've nearly 25 years now in financial services, and I'm really passionate about what I do. I've always loved marketing and psychology and consumer behaviour. So a career in marketing technology now is really where I want to be. I actually, do you know what? I'd swap those 25 years for that 16-year England career and 161 caps, Olympics. Oh, I'll tell you what.
And
being a footballer, I mean, wow. I mean, what a career that would have been. That was probably my first dream. And then I had a fascination with all things animatronics, puppetry, which is why I loved getting my photo with the beasts earlier. There was something, a little child in me was really happy to get my Polaroid. But yeah, my career in marketing, I think actually it's ironic now I sit on stage in lights working with a bunch of Muppets still, my team just there. So maybe it is full circle, I don't know.
there you go.
So that's me, yeah. A lot of time in marketing and technology, and I think compliance is a big part of my world. So yeah, really excited to be here today to share.
Well, I'm glad compliance is a big part of your world, because the first question is how do Legal and General approach compliance and regulations in today's marketplace?
Yeah, we started the day hearing a lot about trust. So trust is really what Legal and General are all about. We've been around for nearly 190 years now, and we've been trusted to be there when people need us most, whether that's to pay their pension or to pay a life insurance policy. It's a really important, trusted relationship we have, long-standing relationship we have with our customers and with our partners. So with that in mind, managing data is equally as important. It's our reputation. If we get that wrong, it's going to really damage our ability to hold that trusted position in the market. So for us, it's really important that we've got the right tech and the right data in place, but it's more about people and process when we think about that. It's more about the governance and the process and controls we have in place, especially when we want to try and democratize that data for innovation, when we want to give that data and those data products to our teams to create value for customers and create great customer outcomes. So, it's really about getting the data in the right place, thinking about the lawful basis, the rightful basis we've got to use that data, and to really make sure we've got the right consents in place, because there's always going to be regulations in place that govern all of this, but we've just got to make sure we're doing it right and protecting our customers' data and our partners' data.
Yeah, I think we've heard today quite a lot around the dropout of cookie consent and able to collect that data. So having the right basis and the right permissions for you to obtain and then use that data thereafter is very important. So in terms of what are the sort of the primary challenges that you've faced in kind of obtaining that data in this highly regulated world?
Yeah, again, another theme you've heard mentioned a few times today from speakers and from Telium is the notion of value exchange. So it's really important that, in a very humanized way, as we heard earlier, what's the point of just asking somebody, give me your email address? It's not going to work as easy as that. Just asking for data, people are going to, immediately sort of clam up. So you've got to think about clever, humanized ways that we can demonstrate what's the benefit, what's the value, what's the reason why. Why should you give your personal data to a brand? Why should you trust them to do that? And what's in it for you? What's the value exchange? So it's really important with consent, with permissions, with preferences that you're giving customers and demonstrating that value. And often that will mean in real time. So for us, being able to work with Telium to drive real-time value for customers is important. And we've seen regulatory trends, particularly in financial services, around things like consumer duty, where, in the absence of brands doing the right things, quite often the regulator will come in and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z or demonstrate this. So it becomes really important for us that we can demonstrate we're driving the right outcomes for our customers. So there will always be regulations like that or GDPR that will shape the way that we act and behave. But for us, it's about doing the right thing and humanizing those experiences.
Yeah, I know earlier we were talking while Ali was presenting Moments IQ and the collection of that zero-party data, and I think Josh earlier was talking about clean rooms and second-party data, in addition to all the web behavioural data that you're collecting. So can you share any other examples of successful strategies that Legal & General have implemented to sort of use all of that data in a compliant way?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is personalisation doesn't have to be that difficult. You can go on a journey towards personalisation and find that point of diminishing return where the complexity or complexity for you as an organisation to manage or the benefit for the customer starts to erode. So for us at Legal & General, we work closely with our data partner CACI to create a custom segmentation the markets we operate. So in the UK, we've got 7 major segments and 16 sub-segments, which have got all the characteristics of our market. And those customer segments represent where customers are today, but there's also clear pathways. There's 2 or 3 clear pathways where people will progress through life. So again, as you might have heard mentioned earlier if you're in the room, when Josh said about some of these long relationships we've had with customers, we'll see a natural progression through those segments. So for us to be able to take that level of meaningful segmentation and create our strategies and our lead nurture strategies and our engagement strategies with customers around very meaningful segments is an important start in personalization. So we need to master and become better at that full spectrum of data, from zero party, first, second and third party data, to create better experience for customers. But we're on that journey now, but I would say you can get great value from those initial steps. We don't know how far personalization will go for us, but I suspect it's not quite as complicated as we're all led to believe. And I don't think there's full value in that full hyper personalization to the nth degree. I think there's a happy medium in different contexts for different businesses.
Interesting, because the next breakout session is talking about hyper personalization, so we'll see if that gets challenged. But so it's really interesting though that we've got like 23 segments that you're using, the 7 and the 16, because in lots of conversations I have with customers and prospects that are beginning to go down a CDP route, if you like, there's a concern that they've got to have lots of complex segmentation, lots of different segments to be able to drive all of that personalization. So the fact that you can drive good return on investment, valuable business through 23 segments is quite amazing. So, obviously talking about a CDP and Telium audience stream and stuff, segmentation is just one of its features, if you like. What other features from a technology perspective can help you enforce data compliance and data management?
So I think we like, there's a buzzword, isn't there, of composable. We like the way Telium's got a very open architecture, and we like its interoperability with other solutions and systems and platforms that we have. That's really, really important for us. So at Legal & General, we think about access, analysis and activation as 3 key pillars that we need to satisfy, either from a compliance or a regulatory perspective. And Telium can play a role in all 3 of those areas, but as you've heard today, one of the key places that we know it plays a really important role is in that activation. So for us, that ability to use Telium in a very open, interoperable way, and to be able to activate with all those connectors, I think you've seen the number 1,200 or 1,300 connectors out to market. That's really attractive and appealing to us to help manage those compliant journeys.
Yeah, I had a bit of a grin earlier actually, because I run the solutions consulting team, and a lot of the business guys will say, do not show Trace to anybody outside of technology people. But hearing earlier that your CEO loves Trace and the magic that it does, it's quite ironic, really.
It's a great shout, actually, in terms of demonstrating to bring something to life. So again, you can have architectural drawings, you can have maps, you can have lots of documentation, but to be able to show, if we have an group audit, or we have an external regulator come in, to be able to show them what is happening at each point, how those transformations are happening, what's happening in that journey, is incredibly powerful. It's monkey see, monkey do. It's much easier to understand than seeing a flat diagram. So really, really helpful for us, Trace.
Yeah, thank you. For all of those who haven't used it, get on with it. It's good. So obviously the title is regulated industries. We're just talking about financial services from your perspective, but I know you network with other healthcare and not gambling type customers, but people in the gaming industry, shall we say. So what lessons could you sort of share with others that aren't in financial services but are in a highly regulated industry?
Yeah, I think unless you've been in Italy on a trip somewhere, there's a cat in the room, but you've probably seen recently some of the challenges of data loss and data breaches. So you may have seen, Santander's name and a few others out there at the moment that have seen some compromised data. And I think when we think about the data that we hold as an FSI, or if you look at healthcare or pharma or other heavily regulated industries, quite often that data we're holding is highly sensitive, particularly when we think about claims for us. There's a burden of responsibility with the data that we hold. So it's really, really important that we have got very, very high standards and controls in place to manage that data. And I think when we we think about the regulation, often it's about embracing the intent of what that regulation is there to do. So there will always be new regulation that will come along. There will always be new challenges for us to overcome, but there'll be some commonality across markets and across industries that partners like Tealium would have seen before, even if it's not necessarily, it's not necessarily something in FSI. It might be a theme like highly sensitive data that will apply to another industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned trends, and I guess if you were to have a crystal ball, where would you foresee the trends changing in the regulatory environment that you're planning for, if you like, within Legal & General?
I think when GDPR came in, one aspect of GDPR that I know has been commented as not being successful was portability of data, so Article 20. And that was very much around making data accessible and of machine readable formats. I think there's a trend that says, in order to make the markets work better and more digitized economies, we're going to need to see that portability. So I would fully expect in future further iterations. I know it's not rolled out globally because of how badly it's been impacted across Europe, but the CCPA, for example, watered down portability there as well. But I expect portability is a bit of a theme that will come through. There's definitely some trends towards accessing data, customers' right to forget, controlling their data. I'd see that's another really important thing. We heard earlier about managing permissions and preferences and giving customers more control of their data. Again, I think that's another big theme. And of course, regulators are becoming empowered themselves to use AI to increase their coverage and monitoring. And I think we're seeing our own workforces being more empowered now with AI and assistance to manage. So I think that sort of the open nature of data and the digitized, data-rich companies is becoming an important theme that regulation will emerge around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're already seeing an explosion of companies coming to the market that are driving AI and providing tools for customers to embrace it and use it and leverage it more broadly than what we've seen in the data science teams.
Transparency and explainability being the key themes there for customers.
So in terms of considerations from Tealium, how can we help you with collaboration going forward in terms of to embrace some of this data changes and the AI changes?
If I had 3 wishes, I would wish for Tealium to be a security sentinel, a compliance chameleon, and a governance guardian. And you've heard about some of those things today. I think when we think about security sentinel, it's really important that data, whether at rest or in transit, is protected, that the authentication to log in, to protect to understand and monitor the users, to understand what is being done in your platform and where that data is going. That's really important for us from a security perspective. Those breaches that have happened, it's often the weakest link, right? So it's often the human element, back to governance and process and controls. You're not going to break in through Fort Knox through breaking the door. You're going to try and steal the key or get in by opening the door. So I think the security elements are really, really important for us. The compliance chameleon, ultimately you work across globally, different markets, different industries. You're going to see similar problems crop up. You're going to see GDPR and CCPA and themes where you have to give us solutions across markets. We want you to be able to help us navigate that. You need to change with the regulation, change with the markets, and give us solutions that are scalable and work. And then finally, around the Guardian, well, you heard earlier around giving people clear views on data audits and data logs and what's happening with the data and how we control that and supporting our processes. I love the idea of being able to put some of those policies in place and to be able to act upon those in a governance sense. So again, I'm seeing things coming out of Tealium in those 3 themes. Most importantly, continue to talk to your clients the way you do. So we get great engagement from Tealium. They're always asking us what our worry beads are. They're facilitating client forums. We're involved in those. They're asking us about the roadmap. They want to know what opportunities we've got. They want to know what challenges we've got. You do that in a really open and collaborative way. It's a great part of your culture, your problem solvers. So, that's something that I think stands you out above other vendors. So keep on doing more of that. The collaboration is fantastic.
Thanks. So I just shaded my eyes because when you said worry beads, I was just looking for Yasmin, who's the customer success manager, and just watched her eyes just go, something like that. So I think today, Jeff started off the whole show today with the word trust. and that came out very strongly in what you were talking about then. And this morning, you talked about bring on the Marvels, and now you've just brought out all the superheroes, all the three that you just mentioned. And this is a bit of a joke, but when we had the dry run, I was just going on holiday last week. I said, I will try and get myself a compliance chameleon T-shirt printed. But I went to the west coast of England and there's just not many T-shirt printing shops out there. So we did our best, and ChatGPT came up with the compliance chameleon. Apparently he's dyslexic, but don't worry about that. That's as close as we could get to in terms of it. But the message really is, Tealium have got your back, and we're there to continue with the collaboration and everything along those lines. And we've had a really strong relationship so far. So that, unfortunately, Truman, that's the best I could do with Truman, but that's where we're at. So I guess the last question really, in terms of what's next for Legal in General, where do you see the other regulated industry brands need to consider when you start coming to look at all this aspects of privacy and compliance?
Yeah, I think we're very mindful that we need to be sensitive to certain data. So we need to think about encrypting certain data. We need to think about, again, with some of these data losses that are happening now, it's perhaps the steal now, decrypt later. There's some really difficult challenges if we were to lose data. So we need to make sure we are fully protected. So that's important. I think aligned to that, we need to think about data minimization. I've heard that mentioned before with some of the brands. So we don't need to collect or move or transmit all of the data. We certainly don't need to store everything permanently, so we can perhaps aggregate and anonymize and simplify some of the data that we store. So that's another really important theme for us. I think we're seeing a growing move, again, aligned to that, the different types of data that we need to manage, so the zero party through to third party. What does our permissions, consents and preferences management solution look like? And it may be a combination of different solutions, and it's great to see Tealium are definitely pushing into some of that space, providing some solutions. So that will help us with individuals' management of their consents and preferences. And we need to do that in a really transparent way for consumers. We need to give them the power to understand the data that we hold on them and the data that we hold for them to create value for them. And I think the more that we can create that trust and value exchange, the better the outcome for the customer. And then finally, as we start to think more about the use of this data in AI, that sort of data lineage, transparency, explainability, understanding where and when and how we can use data, who can access the data, how it can be used, that becomes really, really crucial, mission critical for us really, particularly as we start to do more and more with AI.
Yeah, fabulous. I think it's just those words echo. And I think that just to wrap up really, I don't know if it actually comes through very well on the big slide. James and his team are very analytical. For those who haven't listened to some of the stuff earlier, everything gets measured and everything is tested and therefore gone forwards from there. But I think the biggest thing that in the dry run today and then all the conversations we've had is the word trust. I think earlier you said that people like me have trust in Legal in General for insurance, for our house policies, and more importantly for my pension. So the transparency that you collect, you offer when you collect that data so that you can use that data in those personalised campaigns comes through really strongly in terms of the value that you offer to do that segmentation. Only use like simple segments so you can then drive value, but everything comes to a value. We had a conversation last night at the bar with some other customers, and it was always, if you want to drive adoption, drive further expansion of the product in your team, the value, the return on investment that you're given, that really comes really strongly through from what your team do, and actually really understanding what your customer is. So I think thank you very much for James for actually being on stage twice today, and one of his counterparts here. So thank you very much for all the input and all the support that Legal in General give to us, and thank you very much.
Thank you.